Thumbs up. All right, now I can do it. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Shabbos, Daf, Zayin. We're going to be learning more about the domain, the reshus of a Carmelis. We're going to be learning about the status of in between the pillars in the public plaza, as we'll explain. We're going to be learning about throwing something, Dalad Amis, in Reshus HaRabim. And that item is sticky, and it lands not on some platform, whether on the ground, whether on a beam, but it lands on the face or on the side of a wall or of an item. In other words, in the airspace of the Reshus HaRabim, how we view that domain. We're going to be learning many details about a Makom Ptur. We're going to be learning about the concept that just like when it comes to a Reshus HaRabim, we say that 10 Tvachim above the ground of the Reshus HaRabim is no longer Reshus HaRabim. The same leniency is applied to a Carmelis, and we view the space above 10 Tvachim or for Carmelis as a Makom Ptur. However, when it comes to a Reshus HaYachid is Oyla Ad L'Rakia. We're going to be learning about crevices of a Reshus HaYachid. So in the Reshus HaYachid there's a wall, whether it's separating the Reshus HaYachid from a Reshus HaRabim or from another Reshus HaYachid, and you have little crevices inside that wall. People that are in the Reshus HaYachid make use of that space. That space does not have 4x4 Tvachim. How do we view those crevices? We're going to have a machlokes regarding how we view such crevices if it is facing the Reshus HaRabim. We're going to be quoting a machlokes that we have elsewhere called Choykikin Lahashlim. It's really a machlokes regarding the Hilchas Mezuzah. In order for a doorway to be mechuyev in a mezuzah, aside of the fact that it needs to have 2 side posts and a lintel, it has to have a minimum height and width. The minimum height is of 10 tefachim. The minimum width is of 4. What were to happen if you have the width of 4, but you don't have the height of 10? In other words, it is some sort of arch doorway. However, there is enough wall that if you were to carve out more space in the wall, instead of allowing it to remain an arch, but you make it into a square, you would have the minimum of 4. So the Tanach Rabbi Meir holds that choykikin lahashlim, that halachically we make believe as if, we view the doorway as if the width in the floor, the width of 4, goes all the way up to the top. It has the height, it has the width in the ground, it has enough wall in order for you to be able to carve it out, and we put there a mezuzah, and how those halachas will be transferred over to dinim in Shabbos. And it's important to remember the rule that Stam Mishnah Rabbi Meir. So our Mishnah was not attributed to any single Tana, any specific Tana, and we follow the rule, and therefore we assume that it follows the Shita of Rabbi Meir. And finally, with Hashem's help, we'll have time to learn on Daf Zayin a very important approach of Rab Chizda, who argues L'shitas Rashi on the rule that we had on Daf Dalid, that for something to be considered as resting, for a hanacha to have happened, it has to rest on a mokim dalid al dalid. If you remember, you have to uproot it from a dalid al dalid. You have to put it down on top of a dalid al dalid. And Rav Chizda disagrees with Ashita, holding that for a hanacha, any sort of hanacha is considered a hanacha. With that, let us start inside. We left off on the Vav Amid Beis. Chevra, we are 8 lines before the bottom of the Amid by the 2 dots. Omar Mar. Okay, so we are referring back to the Braisa that we learned on that Vav Amid Aleph. Remember, Tanu Rabbanan Dalid Rishuyes L'Shabbos. There the Braisa, after going through the Reshus HaYachid, Gemura, and the Reshus HaRabim, then we moved on to a Carmelis, and we are quoting Amar Mar, the master, the Tana taught us, Aval Yam, the sea, Ubika, and an area of open fields. V'ho Istevanis, we explained Istevanis is the same as Setav. We're speaking about a benched area that was built on a platform that was higher than 3 Tvachim in the Reshus HaRabim, and it was roofed over. People would sit there to rest there. People that are walking through the Reshus HaRabim did not easily go through the Istavanis because it was on a higher platform, and therefore it's not part of the Reshus HaRabim. And then we said the word V'ha Carmelis, all of these, Einam loike reshus hayachid, v'loike reshus harabim. End of quote. Says the Gemara, Bika, Einoi loike reshus hayachid, v'loike reshus harabim. V'ha, Tanan, a Mishnah here in Taharis. Habika b'yemai sachama, again, an opened area of fields. The yemai sachama, it's interesting that when Yehoshua, when God Almighty, through Yehoshua, conquered the land of Israel for the Jewish people, Yehoshua enacted 10 takanas. He made these 10 takanas have the common thread of him allowing the public to make use, under certain circumstances, of private property, even without the reshus of its owner. And one will be that when you have a field, during the time that produce begins to sprout from the ground until the time of harvesting, that's a time that if people walk through these fields, they might damage the produce. Obviously, no one has the permission to shortcut through someone's private field. And that is, in Eretz Yisrael, there's the rainy season. Generally, right before the second rains, around the 17th of Marcheshvan, is where the produce that they planted began to sprout forth. From that moment until the harvesting, in this Mishnah, we're calling that the rainy season. The Yemai Sachama, the summer season doesn't mean what we call in America the summer season. It means at a time that if people were to walk through these fields, they would not be damaging anything. And Yehoshua said that if there's no damage to the owner, no one is living there, so there's no, people are going to walk through, I'm not comfortable to do X, Y, and Z. No one is living there. There's no loss to the owner if people walk through it. People by default have the permission to shortcut through a field. Now, it's not a reshus hayachid, and it's not a reshus harabim. Most people are not going to walk through there. But on the other hand, question is it considered a reshus hayachid? By the very fact that many people are allowed to walk through there. So says the Mishnah, as far as Hilchas Shabbos is concerned, this bika has a din of a reshus hayachid, right? Reshus hayachid l'Shabbos. Now the obvious question will be, we just learned in this Braisa that a bika has a din of a karmelis. It's an open area, it's not enclosed by Rashi 3 walls, Rambam by the 4 walls. And don't forget that again, for Hilchas Shabbos, Reshus hayachid doesn't mean private property. It's not ownership private. So it has to be 4 by 4, and there has to be mechitzes of 10 tvachim. Again, let's go with the Rashi, at least from 3 sides. A bika doesn't have that. But here it says in the Mishnah that a bika is considered a reshus hayachid. However, ureshus harabim l'tuma. Gavaldik. We're learning rules. Here's the rule. Whenever there is a doubt of tuma, and normally we would say if there's a doubt in any biblical law, it got to be machmer. That's the general law. Safek, doiraisa, l'chumra. Parenthetically, there's a machlokes rishonim whether we say safek doiraisa is midoiraisa l'chumra, or whether safek doiraisa midrabanan l'chumra. Be that as it may, safek doiraisa l'chumra. However, there is the following rule, that if the suffix is about Tumah, and if this doubt of Tumah comes up in a Reshus Harabim, we have a rule from God, suffix Tumah b'Reshus Harabim, Tahar. However, the way we define the Reshus Harabim for this rule that we are lenient by a suffix Tumah is not, again, Hilchas Shabbos Reshus Harabim, but it's based on the following law. In the Parsha of Soita, that's the source from where we learn that if there's a doubt of Tumah, we're machmir if it's in the private. What's the case over there? There's a woman who was secluded with a man under certain circumstances. The husband forewarned the wife, and there were witnesses when he forewarned her, and then she secluded in front of that man. No one knows whether there was any non-kosher contact. And the way the Torah refers to that contact is Tumah. We don't know whether there was Tumah. And the whole din of a soita is that until she undergoes that procedure, which will prove her innocence, the husband is not allowed to be with her. That's the source, that suffix Tumah, the Reshus hayachid, is Tameh. Now, how many people were there? Just her and that man, 2 people. If there would have been another man there, that in itself would take away the yichud problem. So since the source of suffix Tumah, the Reshus hayachid, this Tameh, is where there were only 2 people, wherever you have an environment in which there is only 3 people or more, it's called Reshus Harabim for Tumah. Now this bika, I know that most people don't make the shortcut, but since people have the Reshus to make the shortcut, So there's going to be always a few people in that open area. So Benegeya, the din of Safik Tuma, we consider it Gavaldik Reshus Harabim. Right? So that's the Mishnah. However, but during the time where produce is from the step where it sprouts off the ground until when it's harvested, there Yehoshua gave no one permission to walk through it, nor does the owner by default allow anyone to walk through it, because people walking through my field at this stage will probably ruin some of its produce. So then it's a Reshus HaYachid. Let's go with the parentheses, not only for the dinim of Shabbos, but also for the dinim of Safik Tuma. Now, but Reshus HaYachid is Tummy. So that's the kasha. What do we see? How does this Mishnah refer to a bika for Shabbos with the words of Reshus HaYachid? What did we learn on the Brais and Navav? Bika is Karmelis. Gavalik. Good question. Says the Gemara, Amar Ula. Ula answers, La'olam, it's a Karmelis. And why did this Mishnah call it a Reshus HaYachid? Beautiful. Guys, when it comes to the dinim of Safik Tuma b'Reshus HaYachid versus Safik Tuma b'Reshus Harabim, there's only two options. Either it's a Reshus HaYachid, meaning by Tuma, there's two people or less, or it's an area where there were three people or more. There is no Karmelis for that. So for one part of the Mishnah, there's only two options, Reshus HaYachid or Reshus Harabim. For those dinim, we're using the words Reshus Harabim. So for other dinim, we call it Reshus HaYachid. Lo'olam Karmelis. Am I call it Reshus HaYachid? Lefi she'eina Reshus Harabim. There's only two sides to the coin for one part of the Mishnah. So for all of the Mishnah, we only give those two options. But really, it is a Karmelis. Now, there's a certain doichik in that. The doichik is because he's getting it. The doichik is because the Mishnah says the words Karmelis. But still, that's what he answers. Rav Ashi Amar, saying it's a doichik because the Gemara makes a point in a moment to point out that the reason why Rav Ashi doesn't like Ula is because it's a doichik. They say that Reshus HaYachid means something other than Reshus HaYachid. However, Rav Ashi answers turning to Rav Zayin, Kigoin, the is La Mechitzas. That bika that the Mishnah is referring to has partitions surrounding it. Now let me ask you a question. If it has partitions surrounding it, so first of all, is it Take a Reshus HaYachid? So we have to learn now another rule, and we'll read it in a moment. Let me speak it out by heart. We said it in the intro to last daf. We did not get up to here then. Karpaf means a very large area. We're going to give the dimensions. That is enclosed. And any area, no matter how big it is, if it's enclosed, let's go with 4 mechitzas, it's a Reshus HaYachid for Hilchas Shabbos. But the Chachamim said that if it was enclosed with partitions, but not for residential purposes, which is normal what were to happen out there in the field, then midrabanan, we view it like a karmelis. It's not a Reshus Harabim, but it's so large, so let's read it inside. This Mishnah is speaking about the Mechitzas, which means that biblically, what is it? It's a Reshus HaYachid. That's why the Mishnah called it a Reshus HaYachid. And v'chi ha. The Amar Ula, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. It's amazing. So Ula gave the first answer in the Mishnah. And when Rav Ashi is giving his answer, that the Mishnah is speaking about Mechitzas, he's quoting what Ula taught us in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Karpaf. That's the Karpaf. Karpaf means a large open area that has the size of Sosayim. Just to know, Beis Sa'ah is 50 by 50 amas. Beis Sosayim is not 100 by 100. It's 100 by 50. That's 5,000 square amas. That if you have that area that is partitioned off, but if Shaloi Hukaf Ledira, if that area would have been near your home, no one is living in the open field. But if there's houses nearby, especially adjacent, that's pshat, partitioned off for living. You have your house there, you want to be able to go out there. Amachaya, so you have a very big front yard or backyard. But if it's out there in the field that no one lives around there, so it was partitioned off because it's your field, you don't want people to follow through with your Yeshua's takana, or you want to, whatever it is, you're storing stuff there, but not residential. And even if it's kur, my friends, kur is an area that's 30 times larger than the Beis Sosayim. That's really big. Or even Kurayim, 60 times larger. No matter how big. Hazoyrek l'toicha, if something is standing in a Reshus Harabim, and they throw an item into it, so you know what the din is going to be? Now let me ask you a question. If we just said that such an area is a karmelis, what would be the din of a karmelis normally? if you make a transfer from the Reshus Harabim to a Carmelis, then it's Isur Midrabanan. But since this area, before the Chachamim giving it the definition of a Carmelis, biblically, it has a din of a Reshus Hayachid. Why? Because it's partitioned off. So when the Chachamim give it a din of a Carmelis, they're doing it l'chumra. They can never do it l'kula. Since it's a Reshus Hayachid by the Torah law, so if someone throws right from Reshus Hayachid, from Reshus Harabim into that area, they're going to be chayiv. My tama, because since it has a mechitza, ela shemichuser is the yoyim, people are not living there, and therefore biblically it's a Reshus Hayachid, so therefore you're chayiv. Oh, so sin now it makes sense. Since a karpav, since a bika that's enclosed with partitions, biblically has a din of a Reshus Hayachid, it's called a karmelis, l'chumra but not l'kula. That's why the Mishnah there says that habika b'yimaisachama Reshus Hayachid. To tell you that if someone, for example, transfers from the Reshus Harabim, he throws something over the partition and it lands there, he's chayiv chatas. Now, Bishleim Rav Ashi did not answer like Ula, like we spoke out, because Ula is a doichik, to say that it means a karmelis. The problem is, Ula himself. Why didn't Ula answer like Rav Ashi? Don't forget, Rav Ashi's answer is based of this other din of Ula. It would have been Lishitasai. Ula, my time, Yomi might say, why didn't he answer it according to his own teaching? Amalach, so Ula will tell you, Idi Islam Achitzas, still, if the Mishnah is speaking about a open bika, that it's not really open, that it has partitions, then bika karila, then how can the Mishnah begin with the words habika, karpafi? That's the definition of the word karpav. Oh, and what about Rav Ashi? Rav Ashi says, you're right. The Mishnah is not going to flow without giving a certain learning into. So I got another problem. He says, Reshus Hayachid Ktani. And according to your answer, it should have said Karmelis. So something has to give. Each one has a give in a different area. And let's go right. Okay, 8 lines from the top of the Amid on Dav Zayin. Okay, so as we mentioned, again, the Brais on Dav Vav, the Brais is speaking about Karmelis, speaks about a sea, speaks about this open area of fields, Bika, speaks about the Istavanas, the benched off area that was a common location or on the sides of a Reshus Harabim. And then the Braisa said, and the Karmelis. What do I mean? And the first 3 is a Karmelis. V'ha-Karmelis, freki Gemara, atu kulul nami lav Karmelis. Nino, everything mentioned above is not a Karmelis. Pasha doesn't fit. So answers the Gemara, Kiyasa Rabdimi, when Abdimi came back from the Holy Land, he said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, that loy, no, don't ask. Nitzracha, the Karmelis is needed, Ella, lekeren zavis, hasamucha l'Reshus Harabim, a nook that's adjacent to the Reshus Harabim. So as we mentioned, it was common that people built homes, not the way they built them here in LA, but the way they built them in Crown Heights and Union Street, or maybe they have such places here also, or the new buildings here in your neighborhood, where houses are pasha, they wall one, your house of the dining room is that guy's wall to their dining room. In other words, it touched each other. When you build houses adjacent to each other, then many times the Reshus Harabim is simply walled off from 2 sides, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's a Reshus Hayachid. Or if you have a road and it's taka 16 amas wide, and let's say if you need the precondition of it servicing 600,000 people, it can be that also. But if the buildings or the homes are touching each other, then throughout that locale, there's a wall on each side. But it's still a Reshus Harabim. We don't go like Rabbi Yehuda. What happens if one Chacham built his house, but not aligned with all the other homes? His house is recessed in, which means that if you are on the street and you feel bound, which you are bound by the 2 walls, but during that house you have a little bit of more space. That's a nook that goes in, allowing for there to be more Reshus Harabim space, and they make use of it. So here, even though it's private property, but there are no pegs, we had that before, so people go in there, but when people want to walk, people want to be able to walk straight. If I walk in an area, and for me to go weiter, I have to go out of my way, it makes it a non-ideal area to walk in. So the question is, what status does that have? So you might have thought, that's Reshus Harabim. So that's the word vahakarmelis, that even though the public uses that area, but they use it uncomfortably. That's why we call it a karmelis. Even though, true, if there's so many people walking down the road, and people don't want to be, they don't want to feel restrained, so they make use of any space available, and they will walk in there. Everyone will walk in there. Nevertheless, guys, these are the key words. Since its use is not convenient, the loy nicha tashmishtei, therefore, the Brais is emphasizing it's not Reshus Harabim, Tikarmel is Dami. Okay, so now wait. Kiyasa Ravdimi, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, another din that this Ravdimi taught us when he came back one of those times from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. In the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Bein Hoamudim. Let's go back to the public, large outdoor plaza that has a din of Reshus Harabim. So not only were there these benched off areas, but they used to have pillars. Now those pillars were not put there for beauty. When you build pillars for beauty, you would also align them. It's nice, you're walking through an area and you have pillars on the right and pillars on the left. Now we're speaking about a system where the indoor square footage of buildings, Bechlal, in the times of Chazal, was much smaller as we have here. And you had a store, the system of selling wasn't that you had all of your wares in the store. First of all, your store wasn't large enough, and you wanted more people to never have to see your stuff. They didn't have the big signs. You wanted to show. Not everyone is going to walk into your store. So they used to build pillars in front of their stores, and they used to hang their schayra on those pillars. So even if a guy doesn't go into the store, they're stuck. It's like the big signs outside, what's called visual pollution. That was the visual pollution then. Now those pillars were not built beautifully, aesthetically. They were built to serve the needs of the storekeepers. And they were not in our column. Now that area wasn't even on a platform above the ground. So it's the same height of the Reshus Harabim in the plaza. But again, it's in between the pillars. And it wasn't easy of people to not to wiggle through there, to zigzag through there. So he also said that Bein Hoamudim, by the fact, this concept of the loinicha tashmishtei, people don't like walking in there. If there's no option, they walked in there. But it wasn't comfortable because you can't walk straight. So the same concept. Bein Hoamudim is din karmelis. My Tama, the same rule. Even though it's open to the street and Gavaldik, it's not even built on a platform 3 tvachim above the ground. That changes it. That will make it normally into a karmelis. If it's 3 tvachim above the ground and it's 4 by 4, if it's not 10 tvachim high, that's a karmelis. So, but here it's not off the ground. Nevertheless, kiven deloy mistage luhu behedyam, since people cannot walk through it straight, because the pillars were not built on a straight line, also kekarmel is dummy. Good. Amar Rab Zera, Amar Rab Yehuda, it's taba nachazach. There used to be blocks in front of those pillars, a block. So on top of the block, nidin kekarmelis. Now, understand something. Walking on top of the block is even more inconvenient than walking in between the pillars. They would have blocks, large blocks there that also either they would put schayra there, or many times the storekeeper would stand on the block and say, hey, look at my pillar, however it worked over there. So the Gemara says like this, that Laman the Amar Bein Hoamudim, the one who says that even Bein Hoamudim is considered like a karmelis, then certainly he will hold that the istaba is not Reshus Harabim, because it's even harder for people to walk over a step or over a block. You have to step up, you have to step down. However, Laman the Amar Itztaba, then you will say only Itztaba, who, here's the key again, because it's high above the ground. But Bein Hoamudim, even though, it's not in a straight line, but still, it's better than the nook inside the wall. Because so what, you walk around the pillar. It's not as inconvenient as walking on top of a staba. It's not as inconvenient as walking into that little nook. So therefore, since the nichalei tashmish loy, it's not a karmelis, it is a Reshus Harabim. Lishnachrina, another version. We're going to learn the content, the conclusion will be the same, but the lumdis will be different. That Aval Bein Hoamudim, here are the words, Zimnen the Darsi Le Rabim, since people de facto do walk in between the pillars, Now, why did they walk in between the pillars? Because it's not that inconvenient. But the first lishon is emphasizing the theory, since it is inconvenient. The second lashon is emphasizing the actual, since the darsi le rabim, therefore kedeshus harabim damya. Now, the question that everyone has, and that's a machlokes here, whether this opinion is arguing with the Nuk, because the Gemara's lashon was that the zilman the dachak ebei rabim, people use the Nuks. Elamatz lo nicha tashmishte. So maybe according to this lishna achrina, right, he holds that it's taka lo nicha, but since de facto people use it, before he says it's a carmelis. This version says kedeshus harabim. In other words, the question is, does this version argue with the beginning of carmelis? Does he argue with Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan? Is that a different opinion? Even though this is also Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So these lashonos perhaps actually is a machlokes in din, or it's only a machlokes in the lam. There's two ways of learning the Gemara. Amar Abba Bar Shila Amar Ab Chizda Levena Zekufa. We're going to learn in Bava Basra by Hezek Re'iyah that there were standard sizes of bricks in the times of Chazal, and I'm sure there are standard sizes now also. You make an order, you speak about a beam, this word means that dimension, the other dimension. A brick then, according to Rashi, was 3 by 3 tvachim. Dafken not 4 tvachim. So if this would be a brick, so it's 3 by 3. Now the thickness of the brick, that varied. And it's very negeya that. So now you have this brick, right? And it's laying the way you put it into a building, right? You're laying it on its platform. 3 by 3, but then the height creates a wall. So now there's a wall over the area right around it. And Vizarak, someone threw something. Now let's speak about someone throwing 4 amas into the Rishus Harabim. And the din will be that if I transferred something 4 amas or more into the Rishus Harabim, that's an act of carrying. But for that you need to have Akira and Hanacha. What happens if I threw something that's sticky? So Rashi says and we're going to learn a couple of scenarios like this, Vaited in the Amud and the Daf, a plump fig or a clay, different items that are gooey, that are sticky. And V'toch bifaneha, it's stuck on its face. So sticking on its face means it's stuck on this area. Didn't land on top of the platform. If it landed on top of the platform, then we already learned a little bit. We'll chazer these rules. If it's 4 by 4, if it's 10 tvachim above the ground, then it's a Rishus HaYachid. If it's less than 4 by 4, so then it's considered a Makim Ptur. If it's a 4 by 4 but less than 10 tvachim, it's called a Karmelis. Here it's Zicher, not 4 by 4 L'Rashi, it's 3 by 3. We just don't know yet how high it is above the ground. There's another din that we are learning called Lavud. So if something is under 3 tvachim from the ground, it's considered it's mamash on the ground. All this is nageya because the ground here is a Rishus Harabim. If it landed in a Rishus Harabim, then what did you do? You transferred 4 amas in the Rishus Harabim. Good. So here it landed on its face. So it says Rabba Bar Shilin and Rabbi Chizda, you are chayiv. Chayiv means, why would you be chayiv? Because it's ki'ilu, it landed into the Rishus Harabim. However, al gaba, but if it landed on top of it, and again, it's not 4 by 4, it's 3 by 3. So that's what we mentioned. If something is not 4 by 4, but it's 3 tvachim or more above the ground, that will be key. Then you're patur, mamish patur, because it's called a makom ptur. It's a no zone. It's no man's area, a place of ptur. Now, Abaye and Rava both said regarding this rule of Rab Chizda, v'hu shegavoya shloisha. That's only if it's 3 tvachim or higher, the loydar sebei rabim. But if it would land, if the levenus depth, if its thickness and therefore its height would be less than 3, even though it landed on the top, even though the top doesn't have 4 by 4, it's already considered as if it landed on the ground. So if it's 3 or above, it's not the ground. If it doesn't have 4 by 4, it's a makom ptur. But guys, if it landed on the wall, that's the chiddush here, then we say that what? You're chayiv. Why are you chayiv? Give me the words. Why are you chayiv? it's higher than 3 off the ground. It's 3 and higher off the ground, because since the Rishus of a Rishus Harabim goes up to 10 Tfachim, so it's Ke'ilu, it landed in the ear space. The ear space of what? Of the Rishus Harabim. Now, something has to have a Hanach. It has an Hanach. It's resting on the wall. It's resting on the wall. Now, there is one caveat. What did we learn on Daf Dalit? That even if something rests, it has to rest on Dalid al Dalid. You don't have a Dalid al Dalid here. So here we clearly see that Shitas Rashi, that Rab Chizda rejects the rule that we had on Daf Dalid, that in order for you to have an act of a Hanacha, on the Hanacha part, it has to land, it has to rest on something that's 4x4. We don't need that. It has to land. It landed on the wall. The wall is within the ear space of Rishus Harabim. If it would have been higher than 10 Tfachim, then it's already not in the Rishus Harabim. But since it's within, Gavaldik, so it landed, it's on the wall. And if it landed on the platform, then we want to know what is the platform. So take the platform as a Makam Ptur. Even the platform that's within 10, if it's 3 and higher, it's considered its own domain. That's the Chapir. It's not on a platform, it's on a wall. So it's over what? Over the Rishus Harabim. So it landed in the Rishus Harabim. Very good. It has to stick to the wall. Because even according to the Abchis, it doesn't have to be on 4x4, it has to have a Hanacha. The question is, just David is saying, what does eventually mean for Shabbos? It's many things that we do are considered permanent, even though you can argue everything eventually goes back to nothingness. So if it sticks, let's say it's going to stick and remain there for the rest of Shabbos. Those figs were so plump that it didn't just land there for 20 seconds. It was, however the application of the concept is. However, how much time is needed for that amount of time. Okay, let's go back there. Avol hizmi vihige. However, if you had not a brick, but you have different types of brambles and thorn bushes, even though it's not 3 tfachim above the ground, it's less than 3 tfachim. And normally, why do we say if it's less than 3 tfachim? Lavud, and it's part of the ground. If it's a type of material that people that would walk on it barefoot would get hurt, and therefore people don't walk on it, I don't consider it part of the ground. No, what's the pshat? It's less than 3 tvachim, it's part of the ground. If people walk over it, and taka, if something is not that tall, people walk over it. When do people say, I don't want to walk there because it's hard, it's a step? If the step has a certain height, lower than that height, it's garnished. But if the item itself is made out of thorns, and people won't walk on it, then even if it's less than 3 tvachim off the ground, we don't say the law of lavud. It's considered a reshus for itself, and you'll be pater. However, Chia bar Av, Amar, afilu hizei vehige, even if the material is made out of these brambles or thorn bushes, people in the Rishus Harabim walk with shoes, right? Sh'asali called sarki. People with shoes, with the sole, Tanashama, they walk on these bushes. They're not afraid of it. So people do make use of it, and therefore, if it's less than 3 tvachim, it is considered the Rishus Harabim. In our case, l'chumra yechayev, avol tsoya, but if it would be excrement, then what? Because even with shoe, people won't walk on it. However, Ravashi says that since we have the rule of lavud, since there is a rule of lavud, I don't care whether people de facto will not use it because it's excrement or because it's thorns. No, I don't care. Lavud is lavud. A rule is a rule. Lavud means that if it's not 3 tvachim off the ground, it's considered part of the ground. Afilu tzayanami, because of lavud, you'll be chayiv. Because it went daladamis, b'reshus harabim, there was an akira. Now you have a hanacha, and it's not considered its own domain. Anything within 3 tvachim is considered part of the ground around it, and the ground underneath it. Good. Amar Rabba. Which Rabba? There were so many Rabbas. The Rabba, there was the Vei Rab Shila, the Rosh Yeshiva of Shila. Normally, guys, to know, the Vei means the yeshiva of. So, the Vei Rab Shila Amar, that means it was said in the yeshiva. Whenever you have a name of an Amayra, Amar Rabba, the Vei Rab Shila, not the Rabba that was a Talmud. They wouldn't. The Rabba that was the Rosh Yeshiva of Shila. Ki Asa Rab Dimyam Rabbi Yechanan. Ein karmelis pechusa me'arba gewaldik. And we spoke out these rules by heart, but now we're reading them inside. Notice, what did we mention? That the brick, according to Rashi, if it's 3 tvachim above the ground, it's a markem ptur. Okay, I get it, it's a markem ptur, but, and what would make it into a karmelis? 4 by 4. That's the difference. Any area that's 4 by 4, and if it's not 4 by 4, it will not have a din of a karmelis. Ein karmelis pechusa me'arba. Ve'omer absheshes. V'toifeses ad asara. Oh, that if you do have the 4 by 4, when is it a karmelis? Only if it's not 10 tvachim off the ground. Because if you have an area, my friends, that's 4 by 4, and it's also 10 tvachim above the ground, guys, 10 tvachim is not at all. I think these tables are more or less 10 tvachim, or maybe a little bit more. 10 tvachim, it automatically becomes a reshus hayachid. Karmelis is only when there's no mechitzas of 10 tvachim. So we learned an open area in the field. That's called a karmelis. People don't walk around there. Okay, so I get it. It's not a reshus hayachid because there's no mechitzas. Any platform, the wall of the platform is considered the mechitza. So these are the 2 rules. It has to be 4 by 4, but less than 10 tvachim. Oh, my v'teifeses ad asara. Now, what did Rab Sheshes mean that it chaps until 10? Ilema, if we're going to say that it means the way we just explained it, the who the have a karmelis, and then he meant the opposite, that only if it has a mechitza of 10 tvachim is it then a karmelis. But the iloi, but if it doesn't have the opposite of what we said, if it would mean the opposite of what we said, but if it doesn't have 10 tvachim, then it's not even a karmelis, then it's a vakum tur. They have a karmelis that can be iloi. No, clearly we clearly said good. If something is 4 by 4 and it doesn't have mechitzas of 10, it is a karmelis. Fakert. Bayis, look at this case. She'ein b'toichei asara. If you have a home, can you imagine the height of the inside, if you measure from the ground until the ceiling, is less than 10 tvachim? Oy gewalt. Midgets or people who just have a home to sleep. In Japan or in America, your doghouse. Here in America, you would make a bigger oichet to Nebuch on the dog. But anyway, but it's close to it. Now, guys, there's a ceiling, there's the rafters, then there's a roof. If you would go on the roof off the ground is 10. Which could be, in other words, if the ganze ceiling with the rafters with the roof is a tefach, so it's 9 tvachim tall. V'keiru yoi, but its roof mashlim el asara. So how do we view that house? Says, so say these Amoraim in the name of Rav. Al gagoy, on the roof. Now guys, if it's 10 tvachim off the ground, what do we call that? Reshus hayachid. If it's 4 by 4, 10, if it's a Reshus hayachid, mutal taltalei bekuloi. So there's no limitation of you can't do 4 amas or more. No. Let's say it's bigger than 4 by 4 tvachim. Let's say it's 10 amas. You can carry from one end, put it down on the other end. Why? Because you are in a Reshus hayachid. That's the pshat. Now, even though there's no mechitzas on the side of the roof, and by the way, you have to build mechitzas. That's another din in the Torah of a Maikon, but you didn't build it. The walls of the house, it's called good asik. We make believe as if it goes up to the heavens. So it's roofed. It's encircled off. It's sectioned. It's fenced off. However, b'toichai, since it doesn't have 10 tvachim, but it has 4 by 4 tvachim and more. So what are we learning now? What is that called, my friends? A karmelis midarabanan. You may not carry 4 amas in a karmelis, like you may not in a reshus harabim. Less, yeah, but not 4 amas or more. So clearly, don't say that he was saying before teifeses adasora means that only if it has 10 is it a karmelis. No, punkt fakert. If it has 10, it's a reshus hayachid. Elamai v'tefeses ad yud, the ad yud who da have a karmelis, the way we explained it. But lamai lama yud tvachim le have a karmelis. Gevaldik. Okay. And v'chihada amalei Shmuel Rav Yehuda. So Rav was the great Rav. Rav was the Talmud we learned already of Rebbe. We already quoted once the Seder Hadoros writes that Rav, whose name was Abba Aricha, according to one Shita, he was not the Talmud of the Rashbi, which is mamash awesome, which means he lived for hundreds of years. So he was a Talmud, he was Rab Abba who wrote the Zohar, and then he was the Talmud of Rebbe. Anyways, we're not going to go with that Ashita, but he grew up in Eretz Yisrael. He traveled Rav to Bavel. He founded the yeshiva in Surah. His master student was Rav Yehuda. When Rav passed away, even though there was succession in his yeshiva, many people say that Rav Hamnuna became the unofficial Rosh Yeshiva, then Rav Huna became the Rosh Yeshiva, then Rav Chizda became the Rosh Yeshiva, but some of his Talmidim at that time, they went to the competing yeshiva under the leadership of Shmuel. So when he came to Shmuel, this Rav Yehuda, so first of all, the Shmuel had a lot of derecheres to him, and he called him Shinona. Shinona means sharp one. So many times, he was the master student of both Rav and later of Shmuel. There was one place that we have that Shinana means to the one. And that was an expression of affection, that some of his teeth were very long or very sharp. And when you like someone, however you understand it, he called him, maybe he meant sharp one, but Hashgacha Prat is, you to the student, however it means one or the other. So Shmuel told Rabbi Yehuda, Shinana, Loi teheve b'mila d'shapsa l'mayla miyud. Don't discuss matters of Shabbos with regard of an area above 10 tvachim. What was Pshat? Don't discuss matters of Shabbos in an area above 10 tvachim. What does that mean? What does that statement mean? If he meant to say that there's no Reshus Yachad L'mayla Miyud, no. Let's go another din of Rab Chizda. No'atz kana b'Reshus Yachid. If a person inserts a pole in the Reshus HaYachid, v'zarak, and a person throws from the Reshus HaRabim, v'nach al gabav, and it rests on top of the pole, says Rav Chizda, afilo gavoya meya amma, even if the pole is tall 100 amas, you're chayiv. Why are you chayiv? Because the pole is inserted in a Reshus HaYachid, unlike the din of a Reshus HaRabim that only goes up 10 tefachim. Reshus HaYachid oila ad l'rokia. So therefore, even above 10 tefachim, it has a din of a Reshus HaYachid. Now it landed on top of the pole. Let's go back. What did we quote? What did we say? What does Rab Chizda hold? That the rule that we learned on Dav Dalit, that an Akira has to be mi'al Dalit. Rab Chizda agrees with that. But the Hanocha has to be on an area of Dalad al Dalid. Rab Chizda does not subscribe to that. Got that? So even though it's on top of a pole by default doesn't have 4x4 tvachim. It's not called a pole. Doesn't matter. It's rested. And therefore you're chayav because you transferred from Reshus HaRabim, you threw it and it landed on Reshus HaYachid. What do we see over here? We see over here that what? That Reshus HaYachid goes up until the heavens. So what did Rav Yehuda mean when he told, what did Shmuel mean when he told Rav Yehuda, Lo teheve b'mila d'shapsa l'mayla miyud, ela daf zayin amid beis, the ein Reshus HaRabim l'mayla miyud. Reshus HaRabim doesn't go higher than yud. If that is what he meant, Vaiter Masnisani, who needed him? It's a Mishnah. Tetnan, Hazoirik Daladamas Bekoisel. Let's go back to these rules. You throw something 4 amas and it hits a wall. Here you began in Reshus HaRabim. You're not allowed to make a transference, Dalad amas b'Reshus HaRabim, but the definition of a transference is a Akira and a Hanacha. You made an Akira by throwing it. It landed, like we mentioned, something sticky, a fig, clay, on the, not on top of the wall, on the face of the wall, but we're l'mayla miyut tvachim. So says the Mishnah, kezoyrek bo avir. It's as if it's resting in the airspace, and therefore what? And therefore what? What is the status of the airspace above 10 tvachim over the Reshus HaRabim? A makem tur, so you're not chayiv. Lamata miyut tvachim, but if it's under yut tvachim, then kezoyrek ba'aretz. Then it's as if you threw it on the ground because it's in the airspace of the Reshus HaRabim. Now, what do we see from over here? We see from over here that Lamayla Miyut Tvachim is not a Reshus HaRabim. So who needed again Shmuel to tell a din to Rav Yehuda that's clearly in the Mishnah? I want to take a moment and go back for a moment. We mentioned that Rav Chizda holds that we don't need the item to rest on a Makim Dalad Al Dalid. Just to clarify something. That is what Rav Chizda holds. That din is expressed from the last din we learned about the kana. If you throw something on a pole and it lands, if it's in a Reshus HaYachid, you're chayiv. Clearly, it doesn't have to land dalad al dalad. When something is resting on the airspace of a wall, this is already a Mishnah. And the Mishnah says that if it's lamata miyud, then what are you? Then kezoyrik ba'aretz. So I want to correct something that I said before. Same thing with the brick. We view that as if it rested on a place of dalad al dalad. Because even according to those who hold that a hanocha has to happen on a place of 4x4, if something hits a wall, it landed on an area 4x4. Why is that? First of all, it could be because the wall is 4x4, but I'm thinking maybe because the ground is 4x4. So it's stationary, and it's on top of that ground. That certainly has to be how to learn the Mishnah, because if the Mishnah is saying that if something falls on the wall, lamata miyud, then your chayiv, it has to land on something 4x4. So again, could be because the wall is 4x4. And then the case of the brick was not 4x4. So good. So that's the meaning that Rabbi Chisda disagrees with that. But maybe it could be that if it's in the airspace over the ground, if the ground is 4x4, it's resting on the ground. Be that as it may, clearly from the din of the No'atz Kana B'Reshus HaYachid, Rabbi Chisda doesn't hold that you have to have a Hanocha al Makom Dal Dal. Let's solve that concept in a moment. Okay, so bottom line is we see from this Mishnah that a Reshus HaRabim only goes 10 Tvachim. So Elo, a Karmelis, that is the Chiddush of Shmuel who told Rav Yehuda. The Ein Karmelis L'mayla Miyud. The same leniency we have by Reshus HaRabim that we don't have by Reshus HaYachid. A Reshus HaRabim only goes to 10. So here he's saying that same Chiddush, that same leniency we say by a Karmelis. A Karmelis is only a Karmelis till 10 Tfachim. You're going 10 Tfachim or higher, it has a din of a Makom Ptur again. Givaldik. Okay. And therefore, Va'akilu Barabanan, the Chachamim were lenient in a Karmelis, Mikulei Reshus HaYachid, Umikulei Reshus HaRabim. And the Gemara explains, it's lenient both ways. Mikulei Reshus HaYachid, the Ika Makam Arba, only if it's 4x4 is it a Karmelis. But if the platform doesn't have 4x4, it's a Makom Ptur. Ba'almahu. And that is based on the rule that a Reshus HaYachid has to have a minimum of 4x4. Mikul Reshus HaRabim, the Ad Yutfachim would have a Karmelis, but L'mayla Yutfachim lo you have a Karmelis. So now we're mamash piecing together many details in the definition of a Karmelis. Gufa we learned above. Amarav Gidel Amarav Chia Bar Yosef Amarav. Let's go back to the case of this very short house. If you have a house that the inside of the house from the ground until the ceiling, the inside doesn't have 10 Tvachim, but the roof, if you were to walk on the roof, from the roof until the ground you have the 10. So the din is, you separate the dinim of inside the house to the dinim of above the house. All al gagoy on the roof, then since it's a bona fide Reshus HaYachid, there's no restriction of you can't carry dalad amas b'Reshus HaYachid. Yes, you can. But b'toicha inside the house, ein metalton laboy ela dalad amas, ela b'dalad amas. It has a din of, like we mentioned, chevra of a Karmelis. And a Karmelis only allows you to carry, like in the Reshus HaRabim, less than 4 amas. Amar Abaya, now listen to this chiddush. Im chakak boy dalad al dalad v'hi shlimay liyud. Guys, envision this. Let's say the house is as big as this room. Oy gevalt, claustrophobic. It's very short. It's a large, there's a lot of width, there's a lot of length, but the height is only 9 Tvachim. If in one place in the house, right, you dug in a hole 4x4 Tvachim, so if you were to stand in that hole, from the hole until the ceiling, you have 10 Tvachim. Not only is that whole Reshus HaYachid, the whole house becomes a Reshus HaYachid, not a Karmelis. And now you are allowed to carry anywhere in the house. Why would we say that? Why would we define the entire house ki'ilu it has 10 Tvachim, when really only one small location has the 10 Tvachim? Because we look at that crevice in the ground as the main house. And everything surrounding that hole is in service of you living in that hole. Because we view the rest of the floor in the house like the rule of Choyrei Reshus HaYachid, of a crevice in the wall, right, of a Reshus HaYachid. And the rule is, okay, in other words, if you have a wall that's facing the Rishus HaYachid, and in the wall there's a little crevice, what status does that have? So we say that if people in the home make use of that crevice, they put their things in there, even only temporarily, so it has a status, an area that's being used in service of a domain gets the status of that domain. So if a crevice in the wall has a din, and it has a din of a Rishus HaYachid, so the entire indoors is like choyrei of that hole of 4x4. And it makes a lot of sense because you can't live in such a low space. And Chazal said you could live in 10. Maybe I'm curious, if you live in a bunk bed, what's the height there? Maybe it's around 10 tvachim. At least, so there you can, the rest is it's on your face. So we look at the ikir, it's not about the roiv, it's about, since this is livable and that's not, we view the rest as, that's where you're going to put your stuff. You have people renting out these things right now to economize housing. They have these meshugana places where they make triple beds and you get your little loch. That's the house that we're talking about. Okay, the itman, as we learned, the crevice has the status of that domain. Here's the kasha. What happens if you have such a crack or a hollow in the wall that's adjoining a Rishus Harabim? Abaye says, to be consistent, Rishus Harabim dummy. Okay? In other words, people that are walking into the Rishus Harabim, they can make use of that also. They can temporarily. However, Rava says, no. Lav Rishus Harabim dummy. Rava disagrees. Now, if it's not a Rishus Harabim, then what would it be? So what did we learn until now? It would depend on what? If it's not a Rishus Harabim, what would it be? If that crevice has 4x4 tfachim, then it has a din of a carmelis. If it's not 10 tvachim above the ground. If it's 10 tvachim above the ground, we just learned that there's no carmelis higher than 10 tvachim. If it doesn't even have 4x4, then it has a din of a makim ptur. It's a big nafkamina because if I'm working in the Rishus Harabim, midrabanan, I can't carry from a Rishus Harabim to a carmelis. Now, what would I be doing Shabbos, God forbid, carrying? Don't forget, if I'm carrying in the Rishus Harabim, but I'm only carrying within 4 amas, I'm not saying that we should do it. I'm not violating carrying. If you take a step, you stop. Then you take another step and you stop. And now you want to lean something in that crevice. You want to put something in, even temporarily, but you're putting it in there. So it depends. If it's 4x4 and it has a din of a carmelis, you may not do so. Because transferring from a Rishus Harabim to a carmelis, even b'toich daladamas, is an act of transference midrabanan. If that crevice doesn't even have 4x4, so it's a makim ptur. A makim ptur means you can even put something in there on Shabbos. Okay. So, very good. So says Rav to Abaye, Lidi Doch, you who say that Chayre Rishus Harabim is just like Chayre Rishus HaYachid, Omar to Chayre Rishus Harabim, why is it different from the rule, the Chiyosed of the Imam Rabbi Yechanan, Loi Nisrecha, Elol Lekeren, Zovius Asmuch al Rishus Harabim? That's how we began a din on Daf Zayin, explaining the meaning of the Brais on Daf Vav of Carmelis, that if you have houses that are adjacent one to the other, and one of them was built in, which means that the Rishus Harabim has that nook. And we learned that what? That Keren Zovius Hasmuch al Rishus Harabim is like, what did we learn? It's a Carmelis. But you, Abaye, that says that Chayre Rishus Harabim, Rishus Harabim, so why shouldn't that nook also have a din of a Rishus Harabim? Gavaldik, v'tehavi Chayre Rishus Harabim. Answers Abaye, no. That loy nicha tashmishtei. That's the word. That over there, like we mentioned when we learned that din, when people are walking into the Rishus Harabim, they don't want to walk in an area that they can't go straight. So it's not convenient to use it. Having a crevice in a wall that's facing the Rishus Harabim makes that crevice very convenient for people that are in the Rishus Harabim. It's convenient. If you want to stop for a moment, you want to put something, you don't want to put it on the dirty ground. So the conveniency is what allows it to become more part of Hachi over here, the crevice, Nicha Tashmishtei, and that's Taka the Nafkamina. Gavaldik. Tanan we learned in the Mishnah. Mishnah later on Daf Tzadik Tes. Hazoirik dalad amas b'koisen. This rule: if you throw something, let's say you are in the Reshus Harabim, the problem here is you may not make a transfer in 4 amas or more in the Reshus Harabim, but that isur is when you make an akira and a hanocha. So you threw something, that's your akira. And what happens? Lamayla miyud, if it lands on the wall, not on top, on the face of the wall. So if it landed on an area that's above your tvachim, kizoydik ba'avir, as we touched, any area above the Reshus Harabim, 10 tvachim is called a makom ptur. So it landed in a makom ptur, you didn't violate anything. But if it landed lamata miyut tvachim, kizoydik ba'aretz, it's as if it landed on the ground. And therefore, you're chayiv because you made a transfer in daladamas with Reshus Harabim. What we have to understand, Mike is zoydik ba'aretz. How is that? It did not rest. No, what the Havamina was, we spoke out that the Mishnah speaking about a plump fig. The Havamina was, it was just an item, it touched the wall. That was the Havamina, so it bounced off. Now think about it, if I throw something and it goes more than 4 amas, but it hits the wall, and when it bounces back, it falls, it rests within 4 amas. I'm not chayiv. I'm not even asur midrabanan because I did not transfer it 4 amas. I traveled, I don't care traveling, it's about resting. Until it rested, I did not complete an act. Oh, let's go like this. Even though I made an akira, but I did not make a hanacha. So I'm not chayiv. Olinach, I'm Rabbi Yechanan, that the pshat in the Mishnah is speaking about b'dveil shemena, a plum fig, or like Rashi gave another example, a piece of clay. In other words, it rested on the face of the wall. Now, weiter akasha, the is al kadaitach. Why did you have to set on the Mishnah? We're speaking about a plump fig. Why didn't we explain this Mishnah? We're speaking about that I threw a small item, like a tzroir, like a pebble, or a chayfetz, any other small object, and there was a crevice in the wall, and it landed in the wall. The answer has to be that it rested. But why did you have to say that it rested because it was gooey, sticky? If you hold choyre Reshus Harabim, Reshus Harabim, and take if it would rest in the crevice, according to Abaya, choyre Reshus Harabim is Reshus Harabim. Why didn't we give that answer? So says the Gemara Zimnin, there were times Mishani law that Abaya answered, Shani, Tzroir, V'chefetz, the Mahader V'asi, since normally items do bounce back. And therefore, even if there were to be a crevice in the wall, it's very unlikely that you throw a small pebble, 4 amas or more, even if you have great aim, and it's going to not only hit the crevice, but it's going to stay there. So it's more like, he's just giving an answer that's more shayach. If something's sticky, it's stuck against the wall. Or, Zimnan, there were times that Abaya answered that this Mishnah must be referring to a wall that has no crevice. It must be that way anyways. So it must be something sticky. Mimai, how do I know that Mishnah is not speaking about a crevice, whole-lead wall? It's dafka smooth wall. Because that if you threw something and it hit the wall above 10 tvachim, it's in the avir of a makom ptur. If this wall has a crevice, then why would we say kizoyrek ba'avir? Hanach bechur. It should have a status of. No, if it's above 10 tvachim, and if there is a crevice, then what status should it have? If it has 4 by 4, Reshus HaYachid. And then this guy should be chayiv. Why? Because he threw it from a Reshus Harabim into a Reshus HaYachid. And if you're going to tell me, no. If the crevice would have had 4 by 4, you're right, that it would have a Reshus HaYachid, but this crevice doesn't have daled by daled, no. It has daled by daled. Because V'amar Rav Yehuda and Rav Chia, Zorak l'mayla miyut tvachim. V'holcha v'nacha b'chur. Gavaldik. Don't tell me that if the crevice doesn't have 4 by 4 and it's l'mayla miyud means it's not a karmelis. If it doesn't have 4 by 4, it's not a Reshus HaYachid, and therefore it's a makom ptur. It's not true. Really, that is the machloikas between Rav Meir and Rabbanan. What's the machloikas? So we spoke it out in the intro. In order for a doorway to be mechuyev in mezuzah, not only do you have to have 2 mezuzahs and a mashkoif, but you need to have a minimum height and width. The minimum height is of 10 tvachim. The minimum width is of 4 tvachim. Midgets. In other words, if it's smaller than that, then it's not called a doorway. If it has that size or larger, you're mechoyev mezuzah. What were to happen if it has the four tefachim width? The center of the doorway has 10 tefachim, but being that the door is built in an arch form, a Spanish home, so you don't have on the top 4 tefachim width. You have on the ground 4 tefachim width, and then as it goes up, both sides, they incline inwards. So says the Tanach of Meir, that if the wall is large enough, that you are able to carve out and not have an arched doorway, but have a square doorway. If the wall is still a wall there, even though the Metzias, there isn't a 4x4 by top, we make believe as if it is carved out. It's called Choykikin, Lahashlim, and Yemechoy v'mezuzah. Based on the premise, Tam Mishnah Rav Meir, we're quoting a Mishnah. So Rav Meir will hold Lishitasai, that if you have, in our case, it's Lamayla Meyut Tvachim, there is a crevice. If the wall is thick enough that will allow you to carve it out to 4x4, we view it as if it has 4x4. And then, it's a Reshus HaYachid. And then, how can the Mishnah say that your potter should be chayiv? Reshus HaRabim to a Reshus HaYachid. Is a raya that this Mishnah is not speaking about a holy, choyredike wall. How great is that? That, Bana l'machloikes, Ramei v'Rabbanan, that Rav Meir Sover choykim lahashlim. V'Rabbanan Sover ein choykim lahashlim. Elolav, Shma Mino, that this Mishnah must be speaking about because of the leis beichoyer, Shma Mino. And now it makes sense. So it hit the side of the wall. Since it hit the side of the wall, there's nothing to be choykik. And that's the rule, that it's considered it rested. And now you have to see in what ear space is it resting in. If it's Lamayla Meyud, it's resting in a Makim Ptur. If it's Lamata Meyud, then it's resting in the airspace of the Reshus HaRabim. And if it's resting within the airspace of the Reshus HaRabim, then you can't, then you made an act of transference, Dalad Amis, be Reshus HaRabim, God willing, to be continued. Okay. Is Daf Ches. We're going to be learning about the prohibition to the prohibition to transfer. Opa, let me read my intro for a second. I'll go. All right, good. Let's go. Nachamol, take 2. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Shabbos Daf Ches. We are continuing to learn the specific applications of the Dalid Rishuya. Is just to know that this sugya will go throughout Daf Ches, and it's going to go throughout Daf Tes until the end of Daf Tes Amud Aleph. Then we're moving on to a whole different part of Hilchas Shabbos. So let's chaparain and enjoy the last daf and a half of the laws of Hitzah. We're going to be learning that the prohibition of transferring, making an akira and a hanacha, is violated even if the item was moving through a makam tur. We don't care where the item traveled through. What we care is about where did the akira happen and where did the hanacha happen. So if there was an akira and a hanacha in a scenario where those 2 points happened, in a where God says don't transfer it from here to there, even though it traveled through a Makam Ptur, and had you put it down in the Makam Ptur, you would not be chayiv. You will be chayiv. We're going to have a phenomenal application of the din of lavud, as we have been learning a couple of applications until now, but there's going to be a moededik, such application. We're going to be learning a unique rule of a pole that is in the Reshus HaRabim, and it is exactly 9 tefachim off the ground. Even though we have been learning until now that once you are 3 tefachim above the ground, then either if it will have 4x4 until 10 tefachim it will be a karmelis. If it doesn't even have 4 by 4, then it's a makom ptur. But if it's exactly 9 tefachim off the ground, then lav dafka, then there might be another status of the top of that pole. On Shabbos Daf Ches, we will introduce for the first time here the din of Eruvei Chatzeros. We have spoken Bekitzur at least about Eruvei Tchumen. We have spoken already about Eruvei Chatzeros and Shituv Movois. Now we're going to learn about another din, and that is that one distance is 2,000 amas from the place from where you took in Shabbos. Now parenthetically, if you take in Shabbos in a city, we only start counting those 2,000 amas outside of the city. And really, not even outside of the city. First, there is what's called Iburoi Shel Ir. We'll learn this in Eruvin, God willing. There's like the pregnant part of the city. No, there's an area that protrudes 70 amas and a little bit beyond the boundaries of the city. And from there, you have a limit of 2,000 amas. And then the way of counting those 2,000 amas, not from where you physically were, but the Eruv Chatzeros is a medium. It's an instrument through which that we consider us halachically being in a certain area, even though we're not there. And you get to count 2,000 amas from there. We're going to be learning the Shita of Rebbe. This is a very important rule in Hilchos Shabbos. And his words are, Kol Shehu Mishum Shvus. Anything that is only prohibited by a rabbinic enactment known as a Shvus, Loi Gazru Olav Bein Hashmashas. That Isur will not apply in the time of Bein Hashmashas, as we'll explain Bein Hashmashas. We already learned Bein Hashmashas a little bit in Brachos. Just to know for people who are familiar with these rules, to make one thing clear, that when we say that Kol Shehu Mishum Shvus, no Shvus on Bein Hashmashas is not a hard and fast rule. Rebbe never meant that there is no Shvus Bein Hashmashas. Rebbe means that there are many Shvusim that don't apply Bein Hashmashas. But there are others that do, and we'll unfold that, we'll unpackage that as we go through the Masechta. Just one example. The din of Amir al-Akum, and we, following the sheet of the Alter Rebbe, we're very machman on Amir al-Akum. Very machman. Because the Alter Rebbe paskins that l'chumra yesh shlichus la'akum. So if I tell a guy to do something for me, and he did it, it's as if I did it. So a malacha that a yid does on Shabbos is a malacha from which no one can derive benefit from. Certainly not me. However, Bein Hashmashas, there is no restriction on Amir al-Akum. Very common. Shabbos came in, right? Shabbos coming in means it's lich benchen, or noch you took on Shabbos by candle lighting, or you were mekabel Shabbos early, but it's not yet seisak yechavim, and you chapt oy, some light has to be turned on or off, or any other type of activity. You are allowed lechatchila to tell a guy, because of this rule that ein shvus, right, on the time of Bein Hashmashas. We're going to be learning about a person who is moving a bundle in the Rishus Harabim, 4 amas or more, but the person is not carrying it, the person is not dragging it, meaning the person is not moving all of it at the same time. The person is standing up a bundle and putting it down, standing it up on the other end and putting it down. He's rolling it in a way that he's not moving all of it at the same time. You get what he's doing? You know, when he moved one edge, the other edge was stationary. Then when the original edge that moved now is stationary, now he's moving the other edge. Is that considered transference or not? Because every flipping of the item is always within the 4 amas. And many other dinim, and let us start where we left off. We left off on the Zayin Amid Beis, by the 2 dots, 6 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Gufa, Amar Rab Chizda, Noatz Kana B'Reshus HaYachid. Right, this is important to reiterate. Just to make a clarification and a rectification, a tikkun for something we said earlier on in the last year. Rab Chizda does not, we said correct that Rab Chizda does not subscribe to the rule that we learned on Daf Daled, that a hanacha has to be on a makim dalad al dalad. Does not subscribe to that. But we know that lav dafka from the rule of something landing on a wall, that we do consider that stationary, that's a Mishnah, no one can argue with that. We know that, but the wall can have dalad al dalad. We know that from this din, that Rab Chizda says that if you stuck a kana in the Rishus HaYachid, a kana means a pole meaning an item that the top of the pole, the platform of the pole, doesn't have 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. And the pole can be many, many tvachim above the ground. And unlike the rule of a Rishus Harabim, and unlike the rule, as we learned in last daf of a Karmelis, that only goes to 10 tvachim, a Rishus HaYachid goes all the way to the heavens. So now, Vizarak, someone is standing in a Rishus Harabim. You may not transfer Mirishus Arabim L'Rishus HaYachid. And he threw it, and the nach on top of the pole, al gabov, afilu gavoya mea amo, you're chayiv, according to Rab Chizda, mepnei shirishus hayachid oila ad l'rokiya. I'm saying again Rab Chia because based on the rule that we learned from Rav Dalid, you won't be chayiv because there was no hanacha. It's not dalad al dalad. Rab Chizda doesn't need dalad al dalad. The word here is that it's unlike a rishus harabim. Unlike a caramelist, Rishus HaYachid goes up to the heavens. So you threw it from Rishus HaRabim, it landed with Rishus HaYachid. That's your act of Yitziyah. Leima Rab Chizda the Amar Kerebi. Perhaps it has to be like Rebbe. The time we learned, Zorak, the Nach, Al Gabaziz, we had this din already above, that if a person threw something in a Rishus HaRabim, and it landed on a protrusion, the Havamina is that this protrusion is in a Rishus HaYachid. That's the Havamina. So the din is, and the ziz is kol shehu, meaning the ziz doesn't have the 4x4, Rebbe Mechayiv, v'chachamim poitrim. And l'chu'ura, that's a raya, like we're saying, like there is this rule that dalad al dalid. Here Rab Chizda is saying that your chayiv even don't land it on top of the pole. We had the sugi before when we challenged that din. And there was takahava in it to say that the Rebbe. So Alma, let's go with the parentheses, that you don't need dalad al dalid. Ta'afches says the Gemara by no, has nothing to do with Rebbe. Now guys, there are two girsa'os and understandings of Rashi. We will follow the first one, and therefore we will skip the first line. Pashat, it's late. We'll follow one approach of Rashi, which is good, and start with the words hache. Hache over here, this statement, this braisa of Rebbe is be'ilin that's standing in a Rishus HaYachid. And v'noifay noitel Rishus HaRabim. So here, the trunk is in Rishus HaYachid. The branches we had this above is in Rishus HaRabim. And the person is standing in a Rishus HaRabim. And he threw it. The question here, he threw it 4 amos or more. So that's the way we learned one pshat. We learned the same pshat above. It's not about carrying it from one rishus to another rishus. It's about, did you carry it? Did you transfer it? Dalad amos b'rishus harabim. For that to happen, you need to have a hanacha. Let's go that Rebbe learns that it has to hanacha is dalad al dalid. The branch itself doesn't have dalad al dalid. V'zarik v'nach an noifai. But the noifai is coming out of a trunk that does have dalad al dalid. One approach, which is what we're learning Rashi, no one is holding that the domain of the branch is the domain of the trunk. That not. The branch is in the airspace of the Rishus HaRabim. Must be that it's under 10. Say it, under 10 tzvach. The question is, does that dimension of the truck transfer over to the branch? The Rebbe Savar, Amrina Shdei Noifoi Basari Karei. That we consider the branch connected to the Ikarei enough that we view the branch has dalad al dalad, because the trunk has dalad al dalad, the branch is connected to the source, so it has that qualification of the source. But neither of them hold, you can argue, that you do not need, that neither of them hold that you don't need dalad al dalad. Both of these Tanoim hold you do need dalad, maybe. So don't. From here, that's the way one pshat anashi is. And all of this is just to point out that, in other words, the question will be, what's the source of Rab Chizda? The Gemara doesn't ask it here. But don't necessarily learn such pshat in Rebbe. Okay. Let's go weiter. Amen. Amar Abaye. Zora kaveres l'rishus harabim. These are gewaldige dinim of the rishuyas. A kaveres many times means kipshutai, a beehive. That's the pshat of a kaveres. Here, clearly, we're speaking about a basket, a wicker basket. When you have a wicker basket, as we'll see, some of the leaves, some of them, even little slivers, protrude up. Right? It's not a perfect rounded metal keli. That detail will be very important. But let's first begin with the concept. You have a basket, and you threw the basket l'rishus harabim. You threw it l'rishus harabim means you threw it from a rishus hayachid. So here the issue is not how far did it travel. If it begins under the Rishus Harabim, it has to travel 4 amos for you to be chayiv. Here, I don't care if it traveled less than that. If there was an akira b'Rishus HaYachid and a hanacha b'Rishus Harabim, I violated transferring. So says Abaye that if Kavaya Yud, if the basket is 10 tfachim or taller, however, ve'eina rachav vav, a basket is round. So let me say the following: when you the size of a Rishus HaYachid, as we continuously learn, is an item that has mechitzas surrounding it, or it itself is above 10 tfachim or beneath 10 tfachim, and it's 4 by 4 tfachim. Now, if you have a round keli, how much does the circumference have to be in a circle for you to say that in it there is dalad al dalad? Or to say it in other words, if I were to put a box in a circle, how much of the circumference, how large must the circumference be? So let's make one simple cheshbon. If you have a square and you want to put the square in the circle, all of it has to fit in the circle. What is the widest area of the square? Not the wall to wall, but corner to corner. Corner to corner is more or less 1.4 more than the size of the wall. Let's speak about dalad al dalad. Dalad 4 times 1.4 is 5.6. In other words, in order for you to be able to fit a square in a circle, even though the square has dalad al dalad when you're measuring the width and the length, the circle has to have 5.6 of a diameter. I'm not even going to pi now. The diameter is 5.6. L'shitas Rashi, when he mentions 6, it's inaccurate. 6 be'erech 5.6. L'shitas Rabbeinu Hananel says, no. That the walls of the basket also takes up space. So if you are measuring the outside of the barrel, in order for you to have 5.6 within it, it's the outer diameter, which is what we need to count, will have a little bit more, and that's the 6. Be that as it may. Just the 6, where does the 6 come from? In other words, what we really want to know is the keli itself has the height of 10 tefachim. If the keli itself doesn't have 4 by 4, then says Abaya, then you're chayiv. Why are you chayiv? Because you threw it from a Rishus HaYachid into a Rishus Harabim. But that's the chiddush. If rechavav, not only is it 10 tvachim high, but it has the dimension of 4 by 4, which means the diameter is be'erech 6, or l'Rabbeinu Hanan, no, it has to be 6. Then you're pater. Guys, buckle your seatbelts. I mean, this is gavaldik. Why would you be pater? I transferred something from the Rishus HaYachid into a Rishus Harabim. Now, it's important to note that this act of transference was not by carrying, but zarak. The rule is that in order for any act to be considered a violation of Shabbos, that act or something similar to it needed to happen in the building of the Mishkan, the Melechas HaMishkan. Where do we find throwing that was done b'Melechas HaMishkan? Let's go with Rashi's Pshat. Melechas HaMishkan doesn't mean by the upkeep of the temple, by the avoid of it means by the building of the Mishkan. When they would be making the various tapestries, so you had this whole department, and they would throw needles one to the other. A needle, they would be throwing needles. People are thinking they didn't get hurt. Maybe those needles were not the needle that you're thinking, but there were certain little instruments needed for the sewing that people threw to each other. A needle is a keli. Rashi holds that any item that has in itself the dimension of 10 tefachim height and 4 by 4 is no longer called a chayfetz. You know what we call that? We call it a domain. It's a reshus. There's different ways of wording it. So when that keli landed, I know that it landed in a reshus hayachid, but it itself is what? If you were to put something on top of the basket, what would we consider that? Reshus hayachid. Because it's 10 tefachim off the ground, 4 by 4. So just like had I put something on it, it in itself has a status of it. We view the whole thing is a Reshus HaYachid. We don't find in the Mishkan an act of transferring a domain. We find it in the Mishkan, an act of transferring kalim within the domain. Gavaldik. So says Rashi. So therefore you're pater. However, Rabba Amar, afilu ein rechavav. even if it doesn't have 4x4 diameter of 6.
Why does it need 10 tvachim? Wouldn't Dalad be enough?
No, Dalad does not have the Reshus HaYachid Midorais. It's only, it's now what would be the din based on everything we have been learning? If it's 10 tvachim tall, but it doesn't have Dalid al Dalid, then what is it? Welcome to right. Yeah, but that it's going to be bottled to its domain. It's going to be bottled to its domain. Here, if it's a keli, it's not called a chayfetz, it's called a reshus. There is no act of zrika of a reshus. Comes along Rav and he says, hold on, even if it doesn't have vav, even though it's not a reshus, you will still be pater. Ooh, why? Because my tama efsher likroi miyes shalkana. We're speaking about a kaveres, not a mamash, a beehive, but it's a basket that is in the form of, it's a rounded basket like a beehive. We're speaking dafka about a basket that was made with reeds. And the way people made kalim out of reeds is that it wasn't perfectly finished outside, or the way they considered it perfect is you had certain slivers of reeds that protruded outwards and upwards. Oh, so he says, if we're speaking about a basket that's 10 tfachim, it's for sure some of the reeds will protrude lamayla ma'asara. And when do we say that you made an act of transference from one domain to the other? If all of the keli landed in the other domain, if even only part of the keli is above 10 tfachim, so it's protruding above the domain, you can't say that it landed into the Reshus HaRabim. Some of it did, 99% of it did, but 1% did not. And if the entire keli did not land in the other domain, you're right, not chayiv. Abaya agrees to the concept, but Abaya doesn't apply it over here because Abaya holds that those slivers of the basket don't count. We look at the keli. If the keli is yud, since it's not 4x4, so it's not called reshus, it's called keli, you made an actor of transference on a keli. Okay. However, another din, kafal, piyah, if you take this basket and you turn it upside down, who cares? I'll tell you why we care. Lavud. Walls, lavud, here is only being applied to walls. If something is a wall, and even though it didn't, let's go to a sukkah, even though it's not touching the ground, if the wall is within 3 tfachim from the ground, it's a drop less than 2.9, it's as if it's touching the ground. And taka, we pass in that way. So when I'm building a sukkah, even though I don't need the wall to go all the way up to the schach, because we say good asik, we don't pass in the other way around. It has to touch the ground. But if it's within 3 tvachim from the ground, it's taka called touching the ground. Now, if I turned it upside down, if shiva umashahu, if the height of this basket is exactly 7 and a bit, 7 and a bit means, let's say 6.9. I'm sorry, 7.1. 7.1. If lavud, let's say lavud kicks in 2.9. How much is 2.9 and 7.1? Exactly 10. Exactly 10. Means once it entered lavud, all of it is within 10 off the ground. Exactly. Flush. So if it's 7 and a little bit, you're still going to be chayiv. But if it's a little bit more than 7 and a bit, he says 7.5, it can be even 7.2, which means that the moment it entered halachic ground, which is 2.9, the moment it entered there, the top of the keli, it's upside down, is above 10. Everyone subscribes to the rule that we just said, that in order for you to be chayiv, all of the keli, all of it has to be within this new domain. If the keli is so tall that even only some of it is protruding above the domain, you'll be pater. And even if that's true, only for a moment, because this keli that's landing, after it lands b'metzias, all of it is under 10. It's 7.5. 7.5 is less than 10. But since as it halachically landed, the beginning of the landing halachically, when does it land halachically? When we said it's 2.9 within the ground, at that moment, the top of this upside down basket was above 10. You're potter. Now, why does it have to be upside down? So here I have a cup. A cup, if it's face up, if the bottom of the cup is in the bottom of the keli, even though the keli has walls, no one will say here the din of lavud to make believe as if the wall is touching the ground, because the bottom of the keli has no walls. We would only say it has walls going up, but when you turn it upside down, so the holder, the bottom of the keli is facing up. What's facing down? The walls. Here is where we apply the din of the walls are lavuded into the ground. And if halachically it's lavuded into the ground, then at that moment again, the keli is a little bit above 10, you're going to be potter. I'm sorry? In order for you to consider the walls, it has to be open in the bottom. And Rav Ashi disagrees with that. However, Rav Ashi Amar, afilu shiva umachza or more, you're going to be chayiv. No, it's even according to Rav Ashi, if the basket, let's say, is 10.1 tfachim, you're not going to be chayiv. You're not going to be chayiv. Because for you to be chayiv, the item has to be fully within the new domain. And make no mistake, if you're going from the Reshus Harabim into a Reshus HaYachid, I don't care how tall the keli is, because the Reshus Harabim oila ad l'rakia. We're speaking dafka when the hanacha is with Reshus Harabim, or Reshus Harabim, or Midrabanan, a Carmelis only goes up until 10 tfachim. Rav Ashi does not allow us to use the din of lavud. Here, my tama, mechitzes letoichan asuyas. When do we say, everyone is agreeing that for us to apply the din of lavud here, it's only from walls. However, a keli that is meant not to separate like a mechitza does one area from the other. Why do people have walls in a utensil? Only to hold things that's within it. This is not called the type of mechitza that's needed, like the example we gave by a sukkah to separate two locales, where we would say the din of lavud. It's not called that type of mechitza. And therefore, there's no application of lavud. As long as this basket is 10 tfachim or less, then you're not going to be chayiv. And even if it is, very good. As long as this bad, now it goes, I'm saying I'm hesitating with the 10 tfachim because according to Rava, these types of baskets, they have these little slivers. All of it has to be within 10 tfachim. L'kula alma. Okay, weiter. Amarula. Next thing. Amot Tisha. You have a post that's 9 tfachim tall, and it's standing in the Reshus Harabim. Let's chaz, it's good to his dinim. So what did we learn, my friends? That if anything is above 3 tvachim off the ground, if it's 3 tvachim off the ground, if it's 4x4, karamelis. If it's less than 4x4, it's a makim ptur. Amud, a post, 9 tvachim, but it's exactly 9 tvachim. So you would think, it's a karamelis or it's a makim ptur. And if it would be a karamelis, what would be the din? You may not carry, right, from a Reshus Harabim to a Carmelis. If Verabim Mikatven Olav, people, that height is a perfect height for people to use if they're carrying something and they need to adjust it. And instead of taking it off, they have something protruding, or here there's a post and they lean their backpack on it and they move it to where they need to. If people that are in the Reshus Harabim are commonly using the top of this post, and now you threw something, right? You are in the Reshus Harabim. Here the question is whether you transferred something dal damas b'Reshus Harabim v'nochal gabav. You're going to be chayiv. Chayiv. For you to be chayiv, you know what we have to define that post? Reshus Harabim. If it would be karmelis, it would be asur midrabanan. If it would be a makim ptur, then if it would land there, you violated not even a rabbanan. Wow. But we don't view it, we view it as a Reshus Harabim. My tamon, like this. Bochus mishloisha, if it would be within 3 tvachim from the ground, since Midrash darsi l'rabim, since people who are walking would walk right over it, so therefore we consider it part of the Reshus Harabim. From 3 until 9, since loy Midrash darsi le, not exactly 9. Not 9. From 3 until 9. No one steps on anything that's 3 tvachim or higher. On the other hand, the loy katufei mekatfei, no one makes use of it. So it's not Reshus Harabim. If it's not Reshus Harabim, then what will it be? It depends again. If it's 4x4, karmelis. If it's less than 4x4, it's a makim ptur. But this height of exactly 9, vaday mekatveni love. So we're learning a concept that if you have something that is servicing the people in that Rishus, here we're speaking about the Rishus Harabim, the status of the Rishus Harabim is extended on it. If it's a Rishus Harabim and I threw something Dal Damas away, Akira b'Rishus Harabim, v'Hanocha b'Rishus Harabim Dal Damas, I'm Chayiv. Amalei Abaya l'Rabbi Yosef, I agree with this concept when it comes to a post. Do we apply the same concept in the opposite direction? Gumamai. If you have a hole that's 9 tvachim deep in the Rishus Harabim, now again, if the hole is 4 by 4, 10 tvachim deep, what is it? A Rishus HaYachid. You would argue that if the hole is not 10 tvachim deep, then what would it be? Well, if it's 4 by 4, it's a karmelis. If it's not even 4 by 4, it's a makim ptur. But what happens? No, if it's exactly 9. And the way the Rishonim explain, if you have a hole in the Rishus Harabim, if it's not 9 tvachim deep, people would not even temporarily use it to store anything because most items would protrude without it. But if it's 9, it's a very convenient depth. People can put things in there. It would not protrude outwards. So maybe, again, is it servicing the people that are walking in the Rishus Harabim? Do we also say it as a din of a Rishus Harabim? So Amalei, indeed, says Rav Yosef, yes, v'chein beguma, that hole that's exactly 9 tvachim deep has a din of a Rishus Harabim. However, Rava says, no, beguma loy, my tama, these are concepts that we also learned on Daf Zayin, since Tashmish, Aliyah Atchak, a post everyone used to be mekatev. A hole is already called, it's a non-convenience. People make use, but it's not convenient. Loy shma tashmish. And the moment you can't consider it a Rishus Harabim, then guys, that will be the rule. If it's not 10 tvachim deep, what status does it have? It depends whether it's 4 by 4, karmelis, less than 4 by 4, makim ptur. Eis ve'rav Ada bar Masna l'Rava, who say beguma loy. It says in a braisa, if you have a box, and the box is laying in a Rishus Harabim, and this box is Gavoya Asara or a Chavadalid, and what's the din of the status of within the box? The walls are 10 tvachim, Rishus HaYachid. So that's good. Then the braisa says, Pachus Mikan, right? Pachos Mikan means either it doesn't have 4 by 4, or it means it doesn't have 10 tvachim. Metaltalin. Hold on. Metaltalin. Why metaltalin? Let's look inside Rashi, 5 lines from the bottom. Pachos Mikan, like we said, oy begoiva, oy beroicha, metaltalin. Hold on. If it's less than 10, and it has 4 by 4, what should that be? If it has 4 by 4, it should be a karmelis. If it's a karmelis, then midrabanan, you're not allowed to transfer from the Rishus Harabim to a karmelis or backwards. Why is the Braisa saying that you may? So Rashi gives us the rule called ein karmelis b'kelim. A keli, if it doesn't have its own status of a rishus, by default it will be bottled to the rishus that it's in. So and therefore, what is it? It's a Rishus Harabim. When you transfer something within 4 amas b'Rishus Harabim, there's no problem. That's why Pachos Mikan Metaltalin. And then look at the last words of the Braisa, V'chein beguma. Now, if the V'chein beguma goes to the Seifa, it's less than 10, right? And on that we say Metaltalin l'chatchila, which means that this has a status of a Rishus Harabim. That's mamish like a guma, right? It's not that convenient. Doesn't matter that you're putting something in. It has a din of we're saying of a Rishus Harabim, like the post. So the Gemara says, loy, the last line in the Braisa, v'chein beguma, doesn't go to Pachas Mikan. Fakert, it goes on the case, it goes on the Reisha. That if it's tall, Yud, and Rechava Dalid, right? Then that's v'chein beguma. Then the guma has a status of a Rishus HaYachid. No one debates that if you have a hole in the ground and it's 10 tvachim deep and it's 4 by 4, yes, that guma has a status of a Rishus HaYachid. It's not speaking about the case of exactly 10. Another attempted question on Rava. Eisvei fragt the Gemara from a Braisa turning to the Hassan and Beis. Here is where we learn about a ruvei tchumen So Nachamal, a person is bound midrabanan to the space of 2,000 amas from his or her Makaim Shvisa. Makaim Shvisa means either the place where you physically took in Shabbos, or that city, or if I am going to designate and set aside a meal, a su'udah, that I plan to eat on Shabbos, or that at least I am halachically able to eat on Shabbos, if I put it in a location, and the intent is that is where I'm taking in Shabbos, we only count the 2,000 amas from the location of that Eruv. And that was very beneficial if, for example, there is in a nearby village, there's going to be a Psat Darshan on Shabbos, or there's a Beis HaMedrash on Shabbos, or there's a Shul with a Chazan on Shabbos, or whatever it is. My Chaver lives in that city, and it's 3,000 amas from my city. Oh, it helps to a point. If that city is too far away, it won't help me to make an Eruv. But if I put an Eruv over there, and my city is within 2,000 amas, and that city is within 2,000 amas, I'm saying, because when I put an Eruv, I can go now 4,000 amas, 2,000 in this direction, 2,000 in that direction. It's always within the 2,000 amas from that Eruv. So it's considered as if I took in Shabbos at the place of my Eruv. Now here's a very important concept. If my intent was to take in Shabbos in that location, but that location is Eruv Shusarabim, and I put the Eruv right around there, but in a Reshus HaYachid. So let's say off the road, there was a ditch in the ground that's 10 tvachim deep, that's 4x4, and the Eruv was left in that hole. But I was machaven not to take in Shabbos in that hole, but to the Reshus HaRabim right near it. Since halachically I'm not allowed to transfer from a Reshus HaYachid to a Reshus HaRabim, that Eruv won't help me. No, the Eruv has to be placed in a location that my intended place to take in Shabbos allows me halachically to take the food. So Taka put it on the road. That's okay. But if I'm putting it in another Reshus, and my kavanah wasn't to take in Shabbos in that Reshus, was to take in Shabbos on that marker on the road, I ruined my Eruv. So says the Beraisa and Eschaven Lishbois, if my kavanah was to take in Shabbos under the Reshus HaRabim, and right there, I know that tree, but right there, I put the Eruv in a bar. I wanted to do it because I didn't want people to see it. I didn't want animals to take it. Not that animals won't go into a bar, but for whatever reason, it's not a good idea. And if my kavanah was to take in Shabbos in the pit, you're good. I intended to take in Shabbos in a specific spot, and that spot is Eruv Shusarabim. The Eruv was put right there, but in a pit. So if Lamaila Meyutfachem, now you have to know how to learn Pshat. Lamaila will explain it in a moment. If it's above Tven, Eruv ay Eruv, then a kudah has to be that it was designated to be, I put it in a place where I will be allowed to take it on Shabbos. I won't be carrying Mirashus L'Rishus. But if it's Lamata Miyud, again we'll see in a moment what it means Lamata Miyud, since this Lamata Miyud has a din of Rishus HaYachid, then Ein Eruv Eruv. Because since I'm not allowed to transfer Mirashus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, so what did I put food? If Neschaven Lishba is B'Rishus HaRabim, and I halachically don't have access to the food, I didn't gain anything, there is no Eruv Tchumen. Now the Gemara asks, what's the pshat over there? What's the above 10, under 10? If we're speaking about a hole that the ground of the board has 10. Now what happens if the bottom of the hole has 10 tvachim? What is that board? Does it help that inside the pit there was I somehow stuck it on the wall above the ground? Doesn't help. It's over the airspace of the bottom. It's within 10 tvachim. It has the status of the bottom, right? If the hole has asara, the word lamaila means the daloi va'oisvei, that I lifted up that item. It wasn't resting on the ground. And lamata means the tatoi va'oisvei, I put it on the ground. Says the Gemara, that's not the meaning, because it would not make a difference. If the pit's dimensions is 10 by 4 by 4, any area within the pit is a Reshus HaYachid. Mali l'may l'may l'mata, He had kavana lishbois b'reshus harabim. His eruv is in reshus hayachid. The entire pit is reshus hayachid, and that's the rule. That if you are in one domain and your eruv is in another domain, the eruv is ineffective. Elolav, the meaning of lamaila and lamata is the dimensions of the pit. Babar deleis beyasara. That's the pshat. And what are we saying? That if the pit doesn't have, if the floor is lamaila masara, which means, let's go, it's 9, the pit is reshus harabim. Guma is like the post, not like Rava. Viktani Rava Yeruv. Alma Tashmish, even though it's Aliyah Adchak, since people make use of it, it's not a karmelis, it's a reshus harabim. Kasha on Rava. So says the Gemara that Rava, hearing this question, he heard this question many times, and sometimes he gave answer A, sometimes he gave answer B. Zivnin Mishanile, sometimes Rava answered that the case of the Braisa is indeed not Pshat Neschaven Lishbois B'Reshus Harabim. Yeah, we say Reshus Harabim biblically. His kavana was to rest in a karmelis. It makes a lot of sense, because who would have in mind to rest in the middle of a road? Even think about now, I remember in the Catskills sometimes we would make an eruv from the Lubavitcher camp until the Rabashkin bungalow colony or some other bungalow colony, I don't remember. It was taka within the eruv. I don't remember. I was there one summer, and I was in Siberia, Darton. Anyway, there was an eruv. It makes sense because these roads have a din of karmelis, and we taka would put an eruv. So yeah, and taka has a din of a fakert. The pit is a karmelis. And what did we learn? That within a karmelis is like a reshus harabim midrabanan, which means that within 4 amas you can carry. So I have access to my food. And why did he call it a reshus harabim? Because it's not a reshus hayachid. However, in other times, Rava answered, "Hu b'reshus harabim." You're right. No, Rava holds that a pit is not like a post. It's tashmish al adchak. The status of this pit, that's exactly 9, my friends, is a karmelis. You're asking, you are in a reshus harabim, and midrabanan, you may not transfer from a karmelis the food to you. Hold on. You know what time is the only time that we care about when it comes to Eruvei Tchumen and many other Hilchos Shabbos? The time called Bein Hashmoshes, which means that there is Shkia. We had this in the beginning of Brachas. After Shkia, there's a certain halachic period of time that's called in between the day and in between night. Whether Bein Hashmoshes is 13.5 minutes, whether we're going to follow the sheet of the Alter Rebbe, that it's almost double than that or double than that. Whatever the Zman of Bein Hashmoshes is, we need for the Eruv Tchumim to be in its place by Bein Hashmoshes. Now, we have the rule, Rebbe holds, the Amar, Kol Davar Shu Mishum Shvus, any activity, any doesn't mamish mean any. This is not a hard and fast rule. It means many dinim of Shvus, Loi Gazru all of Bein Hashmoshes, including in the intro we spoke about, Amir al-Akum. Now we'll speak about this din. Midoiraisa, I am allowed to transfer from a karmelis into a reshus harabim. I'm allowed to do it. It's only midrabanan that I cannot do it. Okay, but since even midrabanan, I am allowed lechatchila to transfer from a karmelis into a reshus harabim bebein hashmoshes. And when it comes to eruvei tchumim, we look at the zman of bein hashmoshes. So me and my eruv are in the same domain. Beautiful. And says Rava, this is a psadoichedika answer. Elodavka kamin Allah. This is pshat in the Braisa. Tetnan, another din, proving all this. Im hayerekak mayim v'reshus harabim malachis boy. If you have a shallow gathering of water, and a reshus harabim is going through it. Now, what is the normal status of a body of water? Yom, we learned Yom, right? Bika is Tavanis, Karmelis. And that a reshus harabim is walking through it. Now, if people would not walk through it, it would have a din of a Karmelis. Fine. But since it's a shallow body of water and the road goes through it, which means that it's common for people to walk through the body of water, therefore, the din is a Mishnah that this area is still called a reshus harabim. Ubemela hazoyrek litoicha daled ames chayiv, like the din of carrying. Now, don't make a mistake. Carrying daled ames and a karmelis is awesome, but we don't say the word chayiv. It's pater al awesome. You're chayiv chatas. Now the Mishnah continues. Let's define the kakamayim. Pachos mi yutfachim. If it's more than yutfachim, then people don't walk through it. And like we mentioned, therefore, just by that in itself, it has a din of a karmelis. Rakak, now the Mishnah seems to be repeating its din. Rakak mayim shirashus rab malach is boy. Hazoyrik lutoichai daladamas chayiv. Mamish, it seems like a repetition. So the Gemara says, Bishleima, the Mishnah is repeating the word, the case of rekak, 2 times. That's not the problem. I know why Rabbeinu HaKadosh did that, because it's to emphasize chad b'maisak chama v'chad b'maisak shamim, to tell you that this halacha is true whether we are speaking during the summer months or during the winter months. Why would you think it's different? Explains the Gemara of Etzricha. I would argue that because of the heat, more people are inclined to refresh themselves when they're walking, to walk through what is a machaya. Since the inish likarure nafshayu, more people would walk through it because they want to cool off. And if the Mishnah only would have given that case, one mistakenly would have thought, when it's cold, you're going to walk through one, less people will walk through it. There is a certain point where you say, no one is walking through it, it has a din of akarmelis. So that's why rekak. But however, just speak about the Moisak Shamim. No, even if Rebbe would have spoken on the Moisak Shamim, I would argue, you know, when people don't care walking through water, there's 2 issues. There's heat and cold, and then there's staying clean. The roads then did not have asphalt. The Moisak Shamim, people's shoes, whatever you call those shoes, we would never wear them. They would be muddied. So a person, anyways, it's muddy. I don't care if it's going to get wet and dirty. It's anyways dirty. People think, agav the metanef, saivasai, it's all full of tinuf. So mikri v'nachris, more people happen to go through it. But during the Moisak Chama, the fancy people with the fancy shoes, I don't want to get my shoes dirty, so that would prevent people from walking through. So you would think less people walk through. So weiter tzricha. Okay. However, even though the Mishnah therefore has to repeat the word rekak twice, but this line that Rishus Harabim is going through it, that part is superfluous. Today's Zimner Lamali, Elalav Shmamino explains Rava here in this extra expression in the Mishnah. It's a Mishnah that Rabbeinu HaKadosh is telling you, Hiluch al yedei hatchak, only Hiluch al yedei hatchak is called Hiluch. However, Tashmish al yedei hatchak, inconvenience usage, is not called Tashmish. Going back to what we learned on Daf Zayin, Shmamino, many times when you repeat something twice, a double positive is to exclude. Yeah, there's a chiddush here, but this chiddush should only be applied if the issue is about inconvenience passage. Still, we say it's considered a passage. Inconvenience usage, which is the guma, that is exactly 9 tvachim deep, less people make use of it. Rava stands his ground. It's not bottled to the Rishus Harabim. It's not a Rishus Harabim. Let's go on weiter. Omar Rav Yehuda, going on other detailed dinim of you making a full transference, Dalad Amas b'Rishus Harabim. And what is the act of transference? A akira and a hanacha. What happens if you have zirza dekane? What happens if you have bundles of reeds? And many people, for convenience, did not lift it and carry it, nor did they drag it, which would be the same. When I'm dragging something, it's called, when it was stationary, it was stationary. When I begin to drag it, I made an akira. And when I stop dragging it, it's called a hanacha. You're not dragging it. The definition of dragging is that all of it is moving at the same time. Here you have the bundle of reeds. Remav zakve. So you're lifting it, right? You're lifting one edge, you're standing it up, and you're putting that edge down in the direction where you're going. When you moved that edge, the other edge did not move from its place. And then the original stationary edge, now you lift it up and you put it down. So I don't want to use the word rolling. The vart will be is that as this item is moving, there's always a time that one part of it is not moving. Is that called carrying or not? So says Rav Yehuda, loy mechayev, ad the okar lei. It's not even called a akira. An akira by default means that all of it moved at the same time. What did we learn before? I'm putting it together with the din of which Tana that it goes by his father. It was Bar. He was speaking mahalach ko'oy medami. that was Mamish Ben Azai. What is Mahalach Oyim Adami? That every time you take a step, it's called a full-fledged, it's like the opposite of that. Dear Mahalach Oyim Adami means not that you're not moving. You're moving, but you're making a Akira and a Hanach. But you're making Akira and a Hanach. No, maybe it's connected to that. You're making an Akira and a Hanach. And therefore, every Akira and a Hanach is inside Daladamas. And if it's inside you, that means you never transferred it more than the Aladamas.
So that Akira took place or did it take place?
So, David, the words of the Gemara is that you made no Akira. Loi mechayv ada akarle. So it's not the same thing. There's a certain similarity. Okay, right. Omar Mar, we learned above, we're going back to the Brais on Daf Vav Amud Aleph, that Adam Omer Al Ho Iskufa, of person is standing on a threshold, and we pointed this out when we learned Daf Vav, because in Daf Hey Amud Beis on top of the Amud, we spoke about a Iskufa that has a din of a Carmelis. On Daf Vav, we spoke about a threshold. There it came out that that was an example of a Makim Ptur. And we already spoke out that in order for a iskufa, which is 3 tfachim above the ground, to have a din of a makom p'tur, that Brais and Davav must be speaking about an iskufa that doesn't have dalad al dalad. Because if it has dalad al dalad, it's a din of a karmelis. So the Brais says, not noitel mi balabais. Someone standing on the iskufa is allowed to take an item from inside the house, from the Rishus HaYachid. And the other way, v'noisenloi. Likewise, someone standing on the iskufa can take an item from an ani. Where's the ani in the Rishus HaRabim? V'noisenloi. And of quote, opa, hi iskufa mai. Hold on, let's define the iskufa. Ilay my iskufa is Rishus HaRabim. Look inside the Rashi, 3 lines under the Gemara. Iskufa is Rishus HaRabim. For example, a iskufa that's on and protruding from a mavoi that does not have a roof, that is not high 3 tvachim off the ground, that the lechi is within it. What is that? Anything, even though it's off the ground, if it's within 3 tfachim, it's bottled to the rishus that it's in. And if it's bottled from the rishus that it's in, that means that it has a din of a bonafide rishus harabim. If you have a din of a rishus harabim, noitel mi balabayis, the balabayis is in a rishus hayachid. Haimapik min rishus hayachid rishus harabim. Elo must be skufas rishus hayachid otazoi. In other words, that it has dalad al dalid, and it's under a roof. It's inside the lechi. Oy bazoi noitel min ha'ani. No, haikam ha'aylan rishus hayachid. Elo weiter. So it must be that the iskufa has the status of a karmelis, and that's indeed how it is used in other areas. But weiter akasha, if the iskufa has a din of a karmelis, how can the Braisa and Davav use the words noitel the noisen, which implies lechatchila, not even isam midrabanan, soif mirishus hayachid lekarmelis, mirishus harabim lekarmelis, and vice versa, is isura miya isa. Ella says the Gemara that iskufa is makoim petur ba'almahu. And how is that? Kegoin, it's 3 tfachim above the ground. This is very important. But it doesn't have 4x4. So therefore, it is a makom petur. V'chi ha, like that, the chi asar avdim yam Rabbi Yechina. Makom she'emay dal tfachim. Right? And we're speaking about a location that people used to adjust loads on it. Muter livnei rishus hayachid v'livnei rishus harabim lekatev olav. So if you have this wall, right, and this wall obviously is in between rishus hayachid and rishus harabim, and the question is, can people rest their item when? So hold on, on Shabbos. Now I understand that in a rishus hayachid you're walking on Shabbos because I can carry in a rishus hayachid, and even though that the wall is in between 2 rishuyos, since the top doesn't have 4x4, I can rest something on it. But if I'm in the rishus harabim, how can I be walking to begin with? It must be that you are walking less than dalad dalda. You're walking and you're stopping within dalad damas. And now you want to not use this top of wall to rest, to adjust your load. You are allowed to do it because you're taking it from a rishus harabim to a makom p'tur. However, he said, once I rested it there, someone from the other domain cannot take it, because you can't go from rishus harabim makom p'tur rishus hayachid or vice versa. Amar mar, we just learned we had this in Davav. if you transferred it from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim through the Makim Ptur, the Imnatal v'nasan shlashtan pturin. What's that shlashtan pturin? Pturin means that they didn't violate an Isur Midoraisa, but they violated an Isur Midrabanan. Now, what did we just learn from Rava? We just learned from Rava, the Omar Rava, Hamavir Chayfetz Mitchilas Dalal Soif Dalet, Birishus HaRabim. I'm walking in the Rishus HaRabim. Rishus HaRabim only goes up 10 Tfachim. 10 Tfachim is very low. What happens if I carry something, but I'm carrying it above the 10 Tfachim? Afal Pi Sheha Eviroi Daf Tes Derech Olav, he carried it over his head, Avada over 10 Tfachim. Means he carried it through a Makim Tur. You know what Rava says? Not Potter. Rava says you're Chayiv. Now I can argue. I took it from one domain, right? From one Daladamas. I put it down Daladamas away, but it went through a Makim Tur. What does Rava say? You're Chayiv. What did we just say right now? That if I take something from a Rishus HaYachid, I put it on a Makim Tur, then I take it from the Makim Tur, and I put it in the Rishus HaRabim, we said, I'm not chayiv, it's taka asu, but I'm not chayiv. What's the difference? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you the difference. In the Hassan over there, in the case of the Braisa, in the case of Rava Loinach, you did not put it down in the Makim Tur. Guys, halt up. If I took it, if I made an Akira, B'Rishus HaRabim, I never put it down. Even though it went through the Makim Tur, I never put it down in the Makim Tur. The first Akira was Daladamas away. You understand? Then I'm Chayiv. Akira, Hanacha, Daladamas. In the case that we're speaking about, that there's an Isur Midrabanan, I made an Akira in Rishus HaYachid. I put it down in the Makim Tur. Tanach. That act is nothing. Then I picked it up from the Makim Tur and I put it down in another domain. That act in itself is also nothing. Elamah, Midrabanan, since it went from one Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim or the other way around, don't do it. But if you did it, you're not going to be chayiv because there was a hanacha in between. So every time I do an akira, don't tell me it went through a Makim Tur. If it didn't stop in the Makim Tur, the only 2 points of transference is where was the akira, where was the hanacha. In this case, if we're speaking about transferring dalad amas b'Rishus HaRabim, you transfer the dalad amas b'Rishus HaRabim, and therefore you're chayiv. To be continued. Good? Good.